Ladies and gentlemen, let me open this up with something real. Something grown folks understand the moment life teaches it to them. A man never realizes what he truly had until the day is no longer standing right in front of him. You can talk, you can explain, you can cry, you can beg him to see you, to hear you, to appreciate you. But sometimes your presence becomes so familiar that he forgets the treasure he's holding. And then one day, you stop calling, you stop checking in, you stop fixing everything, you stop fighting alone, you stop overgiving what he undervalued. You choose yourself. And that is when everything changes. See, the most powerful moment in a woman's life is not when she loves a man. It's when she decides to love herself more. It's when she realizes her peace is priceless, her heart is rare, and her energy is not something just anyone deserves unlimited access to. And when she pulls back, when she steps away, when she finally walks out of the door that she held open for far too long, that's the moment a man's whole world wakes up. That's the moment he starts thinking. That's the moment he replays everything. That's the moment he feels the loss. Because here's the truth. Men feel the impact of a woman's absence far deeper than they ever acknowledged her presence. Your silence hits him in ways your words never could. Your distance forces him to confront his own behavior, his choices, his ego, and his mistakes. This message, this speech, this journey we're about to take is not about revenge. It's not about manipulation. It's not about winning. It's about understanding the hidden reason behind a powerful shift that happens when a woman finally walks away, and why that's the moment he realizes just how much you meant to him. Your silence speaks louder than your words. Let me tell you something, and I want you to hear it with your whole heart. Your silence is one of the loudest messages you will ever send in a relationship. People think communication is only about talking, explaining, and arguing, but real communication, the kind that changes behavior and wakes somebody up, often comes from the moments when you stop talking completely. See, when a woman is hurting, she talks, she explains, she tries to fix things, she asks questions, she wants clarity, she gives chances, she forgives things she shouldn't have forgiven, and she keeps thinking that if she can just say the right thing, he'll finally understand her worth. But the truth is, some men don't understand through words. They understand through absence. They understand through the sudden quiet that replaces the noise they were used to. Let me break it down plain and simple. A man can ignore your words a lot longer than he can ignore your silence. When you're calling, he can hit ignore. When you're texting, he can respond with one word. When you're crying, he can walk away. When you're explaining your needs, he can pretend he didn't hear them. But when you go silent, when the calls stop, when the messages stop, when the effort stops, when the care stops, when the checking in stops, that's when everything in him wakes up. Because silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you're done fighting battles that were never yours to fight in the first place. Silence means you're no longer trying to convince someone to value what they should have valued from the beginning. Silence means you've stopped negotiating with someone who wouldn't meet you halfway. Silence means you've finally chosen yourself. And let me tell you something powerful. A man knows the difference between a woman who is upset and a woman who is done. Upset women argue. Done women go silent. And that silence hits different. It hits his ego first. It hits his comfort next. Then it hits his heart last. Because men don't panic when you're emotional. They panic when you're calm. Your tears say, I still care. Your silence says, I'm letting go. Your silence is the moment he realizes he doesn't control you, he doesn't influence you, and he doesn't have access to you the way he used to. And trust me, losing access hurts more than losing arguments. Your silence forces him to sit with the consequences of his actions. When you stop speaking, you give him nothing to push against, nothing to blame, nothing to fight with, nothing to distract himself with. He has to deal with his choices without you explaining them to him, without you cushioning the truth, without you giving him emotional support while he's hurting you. That silence, it creates space. And in that space, he starts to notice things he never paid attention to before. He notices the peace you brought. He notices the consistency you gave him. He notices the care he took for granted. He notices the comfort that's gone. He notices the joy he didn't appreciate. He notices you, not your words, not your explanations, not your arguments. You. Silence makes him remember the moments he brushed off, the good mornings he ignored, the I miss you texts he didn't respond to, the effort he didn't match, the love he didn't respect, because silence is the first time he feels the real possibility of losing you. And let me make something clear. Your silence is not revenge. It's revelation. It reveals who you are. It reveals what you deserve. And it reveals to him exactly what life looks like without you in it. Your silence is not about making him chase you. It's about freeing yourself from chasing love you already earned. Here's the real truth. A woman's silence is not empty. It's full of everything she never said, everything she forgave, everything she tolerated, everything she hoped for, and everything she finally walked away from. When you go silent, you take your energy with you. You take your kindness. You take your loyalty. You take your effort. You take your presence. And trust me, your presence was a blessing he didn't recognize until it was gone. Because silence is power. Silence is clarity. Silence is strength. Silence is self-respect in its highest form. And when a woman reaches that point, when she reaches the moment where she doesn't have anything else to say, that's the moment he realizes she was the loudest blessing in his life. And he was the one who turned down the volume. Your silence speaks louder than your words ever could, because silence doesn't explain, it exposes. Walking away restores your value. Let me tell you something real honest and real raw. Walking away is one of the most powerful decisions a woman can ever make. Not because it hurts him, not because it shocks him, but because it forces him to finally see something he refused to see when you were still standing in front of him. Your true value. See, when you're always available, always forgiving, always trying, always sacrificing, always showing up, people stop appreciating it. Not because you're not valuable, but because you become expected. And the moment something becomes expected, it is no longer cherished. That's human nature. A man will take the sun for granted if it never sets. But let that sky turn dark. Let the warmth disappear. Let the light fade. And suddenly he realizes just how much the sun was giving him without ever asking for anything in return. You're the same way. Your love is warm. Your presence brings clarity. Your energy brings peace. Your consistency brings direction. Your care brings stability. But when you're always there, he forgets what life feels like without you. And sometimes the only way to remind a man of who you are is to remove yourself from where he put you. Because walking away creates distance. And distance is where value becomes visible again. When you walk away, you take something with you. Something he thought he could always count on. Your effort, your attention, your affection, your forgiveness, your patience, your support, your loyalty. The parts of you that he never realized were rare until they were no longer his to enjoy. And suddenly, the things he once thought were normal become noticeable. He realizes not every woman is built like you. Not every woman understands him like you. Not every woman believes in him like you. Not every woman stands by him like you. Not every woman loves the way you love. Walking away forces him to confront the truth he avoided. You were the blessing, not the burden. See, when you're close, all he sees are the flaws. When you walk away, all he sees are the qualities. When you're close, all he hears are complaints. When you walk away, all he remembers are the compliments. When you're close, he focuses on the arguments. When you walk away, he remembers the comfort you brought to his life. Distance has a funny way of clearing a man's vision. When you walk away, you stop giving him the luxury of your effort. You stop being predictable. You stop being accessible. You stop being the emotional home he took for granted. And suddenly, he feels the emptiness where your presence used to be. That emptiness is where your value grows. Walking away is not about punishing him. It's about protecting your spirit. It's about choosing your peace. It's about refusing to stay where your worth is questioned or minimized. It's about saying, if you can't see my value, someone else will. But more importantly, I will. Because nothing raises your value faster than self-respect. Nothing increases your worth more than self-love. Nothing is more attractive than knowing you deserve better. When you walk away, you shift the energy. You take control back. You stop chasing someone who stopped appreciating the chase, and you let him experience the very thing he thought he'd never feel, losing you. And let me tell you something about men. Men understand value through loss. They understand impact through absence. They understand emotional worth through silence. They understand a woman's importance only when she is no longer there to fill the spaces they left empty. When you walk away, you're no longer the woman who stayed no matter what. You become the woman who knew when enough was enough. And that changes everything. Suddenly, he's replaying moments he didn't care about before. Suddenly, he's questioning decisions he made casually. Suddenly, he's remembering things he ignored. Suddenly, he's realizing the effort he never matched. Suddenly, he's feeling the loss he never thought would come. Your value returns not because he suddenly gets it, but because you took your value back from a place that mishandled it. Walking away is not a weakness. It's a statement. It's a boundary. It's a declaration of your worth. And when a woman walks away with grace, dignity, and strength, she's not leaving because she's done loving. She's leaving because she's done settling. And that right there is when her value becomes undeniable. Men feel more when they sit with themselves. Let me tell you something that most people don't understand about men. They don't process emotions in real time. They don't break down in the moment. They don't reflect while you're standing in front of them. They don't feel the full weight of losing you the day you walk away. Men feel on delay. Men hurt in silence. Men process when the world finally gets quiet. See, when a woman is going through heartbreak, she feels everything immediately. Her heart reacts first. Her mind follows second. She wants answers. She wants closure. She wants comfort. She wants understanding right now. But men go numb first. They distract themselves. They hide in routine. They keep moving so they don't have to feel. Because feeling requires honesty, and honesty requires stillness. And most men run from that until life forces them to stop. Here's the truth. A man doesn't fully feel what he had until he sits with what he lost. At first, he may act unbothered. He may pretend he's fine. He may go out with friends. He may keep busy. He may smile on the outside. But that's just noise. That's just ego. That's just avoidance. Because as long as his life is loud, he doesn't have to face the truth. But there always comes a moment, sometimes weeks later, sometimes months later, when the noise dies down, when the distractions stop working, when the fun feels empty, when the routine feels different, when the house feels too quiet, when the bed feels too big, when he's finally alone with himself. And let me tell you something powerful. Men feel the deepest when they're alone, not around friends, not at parties, not at work, but late at night when it's just him, his thoughts, and the truth he's been avoiding. That's when everything hits him. He starts remembering the things he ignored, the way you checked on him when he was quiet, the way you encouraged him when he doubted himself, the way you comforted him on his worst days, the way your presence brought peace to his chaos, the way you loved him without him having to ask. Suddenly, all the things he brushed off become crystal clear. Suddenly, the moments he didn't pay attention to come back to him. Suddenly, the conversations he didn't take seriously play again in his mind. Suddenly, he feels the absence of all the things he never thought he would miss, because sitting with himself forces him to face reality. And reality is this: you were a blessing he wasn't prepared to lose. When a man finally slows down, he realizes how much of his emotional world you carried without ever bragging about it. He sees how much you held him down, lifted him up, and filled the gaps he didn't even know were there. And for the first time, he feels the weight of what life is like without you doing all that quiet emotional labor. Men don't process loss through words. They process it through the shift in their daily life. It's in the empty morning where your message used to be. It's in the silence where your laughter used to echo. It's in the routine where your presence used to bring comfort. It's in the space where your effort used to live. It's in the heart where your love used to soften him. When he sits with himself, he starts noticing the things he never thanked you for. The meals, the reminders, the encouragement, the patience, the consistency, the emotional safety. See, men don't fall apart in public. They fall apart in private. They break when nobody's watching. They regret when nobody's listening. They miss you when nobody's around to comfort them. Because that's when the truth becomes undeniable. You weren't just someone he dated. You were someone who made his life easier, softer, better. And let me tell you something else. When a man sits alone long enough, he has to confront his own behavior. He can't blame you. He can't argue with you. He can't justify anything. He's left with only one thing: what he did and what it cost him. That's when the guilt hits. That's when the regret settles in. That's when the missing becomes unbearable. That's when he finally understands the depth of your presence. Because men may not show emotions fast, but when they finally feel them, they feel them deeply. And the moment a man sits alone long enough to face what he lost, that's the moment he realizes the truth he ignored. He didn't lose you when you walked away. He lost you when he stopped appreciating you, but he doesn't feel that until he sits with himself. And when he finally does, that's when he misses you more than he ever expected to. Your detachment breaks his ego. Let's get one thing straight right from the start. Most men don't fall apart because you left. They fall apart because you detached. Your detachment is not just a moment, not just a reaction, not just silence. It is a shift in energy that shakes the foundation of his ego. And trust me, the ego is the first thing to scream when a woman stops giving what she used to give effortlessly. See, men love to believe they have a certain place in your heart. They love to think you'll always be there. They love to assume they can disappoint you and still return later like nothing happened. They love to believe that no matter how distant they become, you will never stop caring, checking, calling, worrying, loving. But the moment you detach, truly detach, all those beliefs collapse, because detachment is not anger, it's not revenge, it's not punishment, it's not a dramatic exit. Detachment is calm, detachment is clarity, detachment is acceptance, detachment is power, and nothing scares a man's ego more than a woman who no longer reacts. When you detach, he realizes that all the control he thought he had was an illusion. His ego fed itself on your reactions, your hurt, your questions, your concerns, your attempts to understand him, your efforts to fix things, your emotional investment. Because as long as you reacted, it meant he mattered. As long as you responded, it meant he still had a place. As long as you tried, it meant he still had value in your heart. But once you detach, once you stop chasing, once you stop explaining, once you stop defending your worth, once you stop making excuses for him, his ego takes the hit of a lifetime. Your detachment tells him the one thing his ego was never prepared to hear. You don't have access to me anymore. A man's ego thrives on the idea that you need him, that you can't walk away, that you won't walk away, that your emotions are tied to him, that your happiness depends on his presence, that your world revolves around what he does or doesn't do. But your detachment is proof that you can not only walk away, you can heal away. That breaks him in a way arguments never could. See, arguments give his ego fuel. Crying gives his ego validation. Begging gives his ego confidence. Explaining gives his ego security. But detachment, that gives his ego nothing. When you detach, you no longer participate in his emotional cycle. You're not reacting to his distance. You're not responding to his mixed signals. You're not confused by his inconsistency. You're not moved by his excuses. You're not impressed by small efforts. You're not begging him to see your worth. And suddenly, the man who used to think he had you wrapped around his finger starts realizing the truth. You were never attached to him. You were attached to how you loved him. And when you stop giving that love, when you withdraw your energy, when you reclaim the attention you used to freely give, that's when his ego crumbles. Because a man doesn't truly feel a woman's value when she's trying. He feels it when she stops trying. He feels it when she becomes unavailable. He feels it when her emotional door closes. He feels it when her heart no longer responds to him the way it used to. Your detachment forces him into a mirror. It makes him confront who he was and what he did. It makes him face the consequences of taking you for granted. It makes him realize that your presence was not guaranteed. It was earned. And here's the part men never admit. A woman's detachment is more painful than her leaving. Leaving is physical. Detachment is emotional. Leaving is an action. Detachment is a transformation. Leaving is a moment. Detachment is a shift in who you are and how you respond. When you detach, you no longer love him the same way. You no longer think of him the same way. You no longer prioritize him the same way. You no longer see him through the lens of hope. You see him through the lens of truth. And that truth is the one thing his ego can't handle. Because your detachment says, I don't hate you. I'm not mad at you, but I no longer see you as the man I once thought you could be. And that is the blow that shatters the ego completely. Your detachment is the moment he realizes he didn't just lose your presence. He lost the version of you that believed in him, fought for him, and cared unconditionally. And trust me, a man can handle losing a woman, but losing the version of her that loved him, that's the loss his ego never recovers from. Distance reveals who you really are to him. There's a truth about relationships that most people don't understand until life forces them to see it. Sometimes it takes distance for a man to finally see a woman clearly. Not when she's standing beside him, not when she's loving him loudly, not when she's giving all she has, but when she steps back, when she removes her energy, when she becomes a memory instead of a presence. That's when everything becomes real to him. See, when you're close, he sees you every day, but he doesn't always recognize you. Familiarity can blind a man. Comfort can make him careless. Access can make him lazy. A good woman standing right in front of him can become normal because he's gotten used to your way of loving. Your kindness becomes expected. Your patience becomes routine. Your support becomes standard. Your effort becomes invisible. But the moment you create distance, real emotional distance, the lens shifts, because distance doesn't change your value. It reveals your value. When you step back, he begins to see the truth about what you were bringing into his life. He starts noticing things he didn't pay attention to before, not because you changed, but because he finally has the space to see what he ignored. Distance forces a man into reflection. And reflection forces him into awareness. Awareness forces him into honesty. And honesty forces him to face the question he avoided. Who was she to me? Really? At first, he might shrug it off. He might convince himself he's fine. He might stay distracted. He might pretend the space doesn't bother him. But every day that passes without your presence becomes a reminder of what his life is missing. He starts remembering the things you did effortlessly. How you calmed him when he was frustrated, how you believed in him when he doubted himself, how you lifted him up when he felt small, how you encouraged him when he felt stuck, how your energy made things feel lighter, how your love gave his life color he didn't even know was missing. Distance reveals who you really were, not the version he took for granted, but the version he now realizes he was lucky to have. When you're close, all he sees are situations. When you're distant, all he sees is significance. When you're close, he's focused on the daily moments. When you're distant, he's focused on the bigger picture. When you're close, he nitpicks your flaws. When you're distant, he recognizes your strengths, because distance shifts the focus from what went wrong to everything that was right. And here's the part that hits the hardest for men. Distance removes distraction. When he no longer has your presence to rely on, he becomes aware of how much of himself he wasn't giving, how much he wasn't appreciating, how much he wasn't showing up, how much you filled emotional spaces he didn't even know were empty. Distance reveals your importance by exposing his lack. It shows him who you were, what you offered, how much you loved, how deeply you cared, how consistently you showed up, how much peace you brought, how much effort you gave. All the things he minimized suddenly become magnified. All the things he ignored suddenly become meaningful. All the things he overlooked suddenly become unforgettable. Distance opens his eyes to the truth that you weren't just someone in his life. You were the part of his life that made everything feel more grounded, more hopeful, more balanced. And here's the twist. He doesn't realize this because you're gone. He realizes this because without you, he feels the shift in himself. He's not as calm. He's not as motivated. He's not as focused. He's not as centered. He's not as emotionally held. Distance reveals that the peace he thought he created for himself was really coming from you. And the longer the distance lasts, the clearer it becomes who you really were. You weren't just a chapter in his life. You were the part of the story that made him a better version of himself. Distance clarifies love. It clarifies impact. It clarifies priority. It clarifies truth. And that truth is simple. He sees you more clearly when he can no longer reach you effortlessly. He appreciates you more deeply when your presence isn't guaranteed. He understands your value when he feels your absence in every corner of his life. Distance doesn't change who you are. It exposes who you were all along. When you choose yourself, he finally sees your power. Let me tell you something real, something grown, something every woman needs to hear deep in her soul. The moment you choose yourself, everything in that man's mind shifts. Not because you're trying to prove a point, not because you're trying to play games, not because you're trying to make him jealous, but because choosing yourself is the loudest declaration of self-worth a woman can ever make. And men, oh, they feel that. They feel it in a way they can't hide from, run from, or shrug off. See, a man can ignore your texts. He can take your presence for granted. He can listen to your concerns without really hearing you. He can get comfortable, too comfortable, knowing you'll always be there. But what he can't ignore is the moment you finally turn inward and choose you. Because when a woman chooses herself, something happens in the atmosphere. It's like the energy shifts. The balance of power changes. The story gets rewritten without him being the author anymore. You start showing up differently. You pull back your expectations, your attention, your emotional labor. You stop bending. You stop chasing clarity. You stop trying to fix it. You stop trying to convince him that you're worthy of something he already knows deep down you deserve. And that's when he finally sees your strength. Not the strength you showed while holding things together, but the strength it takes to walk away from what's breaking you. When a woman chooses herself, a man suddenly sees the version of her he was blind to. The woman who had options, the woman who had standards, the woman who wasn't scared to lose him because she was more scared to lose herself, the woman he thought would always stay but didn't. And that's when the panic hits him, quietly at first, then louder, then relentless, because let me tell you something about men. We don't wake up when things are comfortable. We wake up when they're slipping away. We wake up when the silence gets too heavy. We wake up when the space you created becomes too real. We wake up when we realize the woman we thought was waiting ain't waiting no more. When you choose yourself, you stop explaining your worth and you start embodying it. You start living in a way that says, if you want to be in my life, you move accordingly. And that's the part men feel the hardest, because they can't manipulate self-respect. They can't negotiate confidence, and they can't charm a woman who has healed from needing validation. You start pouring into your dreams again. You start prioritizing your peace. You start showing up for yourself in ways you begged him to show up for you. You become unavailable, not out of spite, but out of evolution. And he sees all of it. He may not admit it, but he sees it. He sees the glow. He sees the discipline. He sees the boundaries. He sees the shift in your spirit. And once a woman chooses herself, a man can never see her the same again. She becomes too powerful, too self-assured, too complete. And that's when he realizes something he never understood before. You weren't asking too much. You were offering too much. You were giving him